Welcome back, YouTube. My name is Chris. Today we're going to be reviewing the Samsung Galaxy S20 FE 5G. FE stands for Fan Edition. And I wanted to give my true honest experience feedback for using this device for the past 2 weeks. But I want to give you just cut dry raw of my experience. I'm going to just talk as I come across things and remember things off the top of my head. Full disclosure, I did purchase this through T-Mobile, so my experience might be slightly different than yours. So let's get right into it. First, we're going to start off and go through each little bit of the phone. I want to go through this thoroughly. That way you have the most amount of information. Now, I'm coming from using the Pixel 4. I wanted to try something different, and so here we are today. So I picked this up on T-Mobile with their deal of trading in a device, getting $500 off, and also getting $200 credit for using an insider code. So, theory, that makes this phone free. And I want to keep that in perspective when I'm informing you of my experiences on this and whether or not I recommend this. If you did get that deal, then fantastic. You got an excellent deal for pretty much a flagship phone. Now, if you'd paid full price for this, that's where things get a little tricky in my experience and my point of view. So let's start off with the design of this device. Now, the design I really enjoyed. It feels great. It looks great. It also helps that Samsung offers this in a myriad of colors, ranging from white to red to black to this nice cloud mist mint color. I love this color. It does a really good job on hiding fingerprints. I can't really talk about the other colors, but at least this one, fingerprints are minimal. Now the back, it has this matte finish, and I think it does a really nice job on something that Samsung cut corners on to save money, and that is going with a plastic back. So that is good for two things. One, this allows for a lighter device. It also keeps the phone from being as fragile as something that's made out of glass. So it's going to be a little bit more durable in that sense too. You don't have to worry about the back cracking, just the front. The device, the frame of the phone is actually aluminum, so you are going to be holding metal. It's not like the OnePlus Nord where it's plastic and this shiny paint is just covering it. So you are holding metal. It does give you a nice firm feel and sturdy feel of the device. You have USB-C at the bottom, no headphone jack, not a big deal. Most devices nowadays don't have it anyways. The feel in the hand is actually quite comfortable. I didn't have really many issues in terms of using the device in that regard. All the buttons are easily accessible regardless if you're left-handed or right-handed. It was actually nice and refreshing to have that power button on the bottom right where my thumb rests versus on the Pixel, the power button being on top of the volume buttons. It took a little bit getting used to, but I think if you're coming from another Samsung phone or another Android device, that's not going to be an issue at all. There's no Bixby button, hooray, but by default, Samsung makes the power button a Bixby button. So you can't press and hold it down to open up your power menu. You actually open up Bixby, you have to go into the settings and make that change, so keep that in mind as well. In terms of overall size of this device, it is on par with any Android device that is 6.5-inch display, which I'll get into in just a little bit, but it is a pretty hefty device. It is 190 grams, so it's not the lightest phone, especially for me coming from a Pixel 4, a very small, light device. That did take some time getting used to. But overall, one-handed usability was difficult. Obviously, you can't reach up to the top with your thumb, and across the screen, depending on the size of your hands, that can also be a challenge for you. And so the specs on this, I said at the beginning, this being pretty much a flagship device, and I want to keep that in terms of its own realm, so to speak. I say that because a lot of these mid-range phones nowadays have these top-of-the-line specs. Companies from Xiaomi, OnePlus, Realme, etc. All these can put a quick processor, huge RAM, and undercut competition by pricing their devices very cheap. So this has a Snapdragon 865, so not the 865 Plus, not really a big deal. You're not going to really notice a difference. The 5G model here in the US does have 6 gigs of RAM. Depending on your region, you might have 8 gigs of RAM, so just bear that in mind. So far so good. It also does actually have 128 gigs of internal storage at UFS 3.1, so very fast storage. You're going to be able to load things, install apps very quickly on this. So performance, top notch, 100%, no issue. Any flagship device, really, you're going to not really notice the difference in performance if you talk about real usability. So I'm not really going to get into specs in terms of benchmarks. Those were just splitting hairs at this point. You're not going to really see a difference. You do have dual firing speakers, one up here on the earpiece and one at the bottom. Let's take a listen. This does have 5G, and that is fantastic. First time experiencing 5G here in actually Tennessee. Pretty much everywhere I went in terms of the city, I got mostly 5G and was getting up to 200 megabits. And depending on the areas, maybe a little bit faster, maybe a little bit slower. So happy to see that. So in terms of the front, you have a nice 6.5 inch Super AMOLED display. It is 1080p, so you're not getting any of that quad HD resolution like you would on another flagship device. So just a note there. So when you look at the device on the front side, actually, you can see the front-facing camera. It's not nice, good looking like you would expect on other devices. There's a silver gray ring around the front. It's probably to differentiate the flagship from a lower end device. Most other devices, if not all, I think this is the first time I've seen it on a phone, that is not black. It doesn't blend in. Sticks out when you have the screen off, but when you're actually using the device, it's not too terribly noticeable, but it is noticeable nonetheless. So just a heads up there. You might have already seen this from other reviews, but again, just something else that Samsung has done to make this phone look a little cheaper than their other flagships. Also, when you unlock the phone, the pinhole punch is actually bigger, and then as soon as you unlock the device, that hole is much smaller itself. The front glass is Gorilla Glass 3, so it's not a nice up-to-date version of Gorilla Glass. It's another cost-saving measure, but if you use a tempered glass screen protector, which I did in this video, you can check that out. And Mr. Shields screen protectors for the Galaxy A51 fit on this just fine, and that's what I've been using and haven't had any sort of issues. You can check out that video on the installation and how it looks and everything else in my experience with that. Now, this also includes 120 Hz, which means super buttery smooth response in terms of the overall UI. It's interesting because apps like Chrome, Twitter, Reddit, and a couple others, I noticed while I was scrolling, it would jump, it would jitter, it wouldn't scroll as smooth as you would expect as 120 Hertz. I don't know if it's because the apps aren't optimized, or maybe the phone and those apps don't work quite well with One UI 2.5. I don't know, it just seemed weird outside of the actual One UI system, operating system from Samsung. Through all the settings, scrolling, swiping, you name it, buttery smooth, no issues whatsoever. It looks great, feels great, and it's very responsive. Now, there has been a lot of reports on XDA. I experienced it a little bit myself in terms of the screen being very sensitive. Now, I submitted a bug report. Samsung has stated that they have noticed that there are some issues upon initial touching of the screen. They are working on a bug fix for that. I'll hold my breath. So this has a optical fingerprint scanner. So that means a couple things. The fingerprint is built into the display. It uses a camera to basically capture the image of your fingerprint and compare it to what was scanned when you enrolled your fingerprint. It works fine. It's fast. It's reliable. Have no issues whatsoever. It works when you are on the always on display, and it unlocks no issues. The issue that I have, maybe because I haven't used a in-screen fingerprint scanner since the OnePlus 7 Pro, but when you wake up in the morning and it's dark in your room, what do you expect when you turn on your device? The screen to be very dim and dark, right? Well, with this device, if you don't just tap it to have the always on display enabled, you turn on the screen and guess what? The screen brightness is completely full, max brightness, without blue tint even on. Even though you have turned on blue tint to be active until you turn it off or have it on a schedule, whatever it is, you waking up the screen to unlock the device with your fingerprint will disable that blue tint and blind you till you wake up. And it's very annoying. It is also very inconvenient because it could also wake up your partner, your spouse, whoever it might be next to you in the morning or at night, and wake them up because the screen brightness, even though it's a plus, is extremely bright. Brightness on this, like I just mentioned, is great. I can read it outdoors in sun daylight and have no issues whatsoever. I do have a complaint that the screen doesn't get dim enough. I do like to use my devices at night. I do have blue filter turned on so that way it's easier on my eyes. I do want to help my eyes in terms of falling asleep. That's why my glasses have blue filter built into them. But also I have the screen brightness turned all the way down and it's not dim enough compared to my Pixel 4 that I can have it all the way down and I have no issues with it whatsoever with the blue filter. And yeah, the face unlock, because there is no sort of sensors for facing unlocking, it is just using the front camera to compare the image of your face. So it's not going to be the most secure, plus it's not going to work at nighttime. So keep that in mind as well. Something I did notice while using this device for the past 2 weeks is while scrolling, even though it is 120 hertz, it seems like the screen still slightly lags between responsiveness when I'm moving my finger. So I don't know if it's just the pulling rate of touch input or something like that, but it is still definitely buttery smooth. I don't think anyone will ever really notice. I'm just really nitpicking at this point. Also with the display, in my initial unboxing, I did cover just briefly the screen modes. So the vivid and natural modes. So I preferred natural because the vivid oversaturated a lot of the colors, especially reds. They were very harsh and they didn't look very natural to me. Unfortunately, if you choose natural, you don't have a way to choose the white balance of the screen anymore. You don't have the option to choose between a warm or a cooler tone, which is kind of really unfortunate. I'd wanted to be able to have a natural color palette for the display, but also have a warmer hue for white balance. You can't do both, so that was a bummer to see. So software wise, I feel like Samsung has dropped the ball. I haven't used a Samsung device. If you watch my unboxing of this device, I mentioned I haven't used a Samsung phone since the Galaxy S6. The software has done miles of upgrades from TouchWiz. This is now running One UI 2.5. I just feel like Samsung has done so much with the software. It looks great, but coming from a Pixel experience or even OnePlus, the software is very convoluted. It's overwhelming. One UI, you had to go through a lot of settings. They have settings galore. Way too much for me to even cover and for me to even feel comfortable covering because there are so many. I'm not a fan of Bixby. I prefer Google Assistant as my assistant. In terms of, I spent a lot of time going through this phone, turning off, changing settings just to get it to the way that I like it. Now on a Pixel, it pretty much comes what I'd expect. It's very clean, easy to use. This I had to, if you look at it, if I swipe down twice after removing a whole bunch of quick toggles, I now pretty much are down to maybe 3 rows. This takes up the entire screen. I don't want to have to use an entire screen just for a quick toggle. There's tons of wasted space in One UI and drives me crazy. the One UI 3.0 beta for Android 11 launched recently in the past couple weeks for the Galaxy S20 and Note 20 series, flagships in their own respects, but Samsung did not release it for the FE edition. Now, it concerns me. Maybe I'm a little conspiracy theorist in that sense, but it concerns me because I feel like Samsung is going to treat this like a mid-range phone. To some sense, it can be considered mid-range, but at the sense, if you put flagship specs, if you market it being a great phone, cameras, this, that, and it's priced at $700, that's not really mid-range price. Years ago, $700 was a flagship price phone. But because Samsung has such a huge amount of devices ranging from down to $200 all the way up to $2,000, this in their minds can be considered budget and mid-range. And I feel like they're going to treat it in terms of updates. Even though they've promised 3 years of updates, of Android updates, I'll believe it when I see it. Not releasing the One UI 3.0 beta for this right out of the gate is concerning. It's mid-October now as I'm recording this, and there hasn't been an October security patch or any bug fixes for this device whatsoever. There has been talks and there have been apparently releases of the October update in other regions such as Germany, but it has not touched the US. Who knows when that's going to happen? And I feel like because they have so many devices in their lineup across so many different regions, it's going to take time for timely updates to come to this fan edition, which is something fans, I feel like, are not going to settle on, and it concerns me. A second thing about the software is does not support bootloader unlocking. Even if you buy the unlocked variant from Samsung or even Amazon, this does not allow you to unlock the bootloader, at least in the US. I don't know about the European or other regions. I understand it being a carrier model, but if you buy an unlocked device, you should be able to unlock the bootloader regardless of the software. Now, rest in peace Huawei, Honor, those devices, you can't unlock the bootloader officially. I was expecting to at least be able to flash maybe a different region firmware on it to unlock it, flash the unlocked firmware onto this to have that option, but nope, it is a big no. So just know if you go into this wanting to be able to unlock the device in terms of the bootloader, root, flash kernels, this and that, I would run away and not look back on getting the S20 Fan Edition. Fan Edition, again, if you're like me, if you're watching this, if you have a curiosity on this device like I did, then you'll be disappointed just like I was. I just want to give it to you straight in that regard. So that's unfortunate. I did install Franco Kernel's Naptime app and give the proper permissions through ADB for additional power saving on this, and I'll get into that in a little bit when I get into the battery. I have run into a lot of weird bugs. The device has rebooted on itself with no idea why. It's only happened once. I have come across where when I swipe up, the entire screen becomes the app, and I can swipe between all the apps. Instead of the apps being small and pages like this and cards, then it becomes the entire screen, and it looks like you can't interact with the phone, but you actually can. It's still in the recents menu, but it just looks completely different until you can actually swipe left to back out or tap in the normal area where an app isn't. So it's just little weird bugs that Samsung has yet to actually fix. Hoping that there is a fix. Submitted bug reports. Who knows? A bug, I never was able to get Google Pay to work. I have, just like every other Android device, gone through the setup process, adding my debit card, and I have security such as my fingerprint, face unlock, and it errors out every single terminal. I've tried it on multiple different retailers, never worked. Worked on my Pixel 4. I'm even rooted on that device. So I don't know what's going on there. I do have a completely different launcher theme setup on this to make it more look like a Pixel device. I am using Action Launcher using the Pro variant, which added additional features such as swiping down on the home screen, double tapping on the home screen to turn off the display, having the Google One shelf basically, all those sort of features, the Google Assistant bar at the bottom, all those things. Action Launcher, definitely recommend checking out in the App Store. You can easily search that. So I was able to make my device look and feel close to a Pixel device as I can, to be something that I'm more familiar with. For my widget up top, I am using Overdrop, which is a nice, beautiful UI app, and I suggest you check that out as well. But the overall experience for the software, I've been ill-impressed, so to speak. So a big thing for me when I get a flagship device, or when I think I'm getting a flagship device, is the cameras, and I'm sure that's with you as well. So the cameras on this are good. I say good in relative terms to coming from a Pixel. So a Pixel has been pretty much the spoiler for many Android users. They are the top of the line in terms of what you strive for both front-facing portrait photography, night photography, astrophotography, camera in general. So Google Pixel coming to this, I like the idea of having multiple cameras, a wide angle, a super wide angle, and a telephoto lens. Now, all that is great on paper. 12 megapixel with 1.8 aperture, which sounds great. Another 12 megapixel 2.2 aperture for the ultra wide. And then you also have an 8 megapixel 2.4 aperture telephoto. So the telephoto, I'm not really a big deal, not of interest for, but the ultra wide and just the standard sensor I was excited about because f1.8 sounds great. Optical image stabilization sounds great. I don't see why there's an issue. Front camera, 32 megapixels, f2.2. What is there not to love about it? Well, I feel like, again, here's something else that Samsung has differentiated this device from the S20 Note 20. If they make this device too good compared to those devices, no one's going to buy their top-of-the-line flagship devices. They're going to see, why do I need to pay $2,000 when I can get the same cameras on this? And I feel like they've skimped out on the cameras in terms of even the software, but also the hardware. I just felt like the camera performance and the output, and I'll have all the pictures from my trip here recently. They look good, but after you zoom in or you start really like taking notice to a lot of the details in the photo, it kind of falls apart. And that even is in terms of the front-facing camera. Front-facing camera, regardless of the lighting that I was in, could not, for the life of me, have any sort of detail in the images. At first glance, it looks great, but as soon as you slightly zoom in, look on the details of your face, it looks very smudged, like water paint, and it is really weird. Perfect lighting, all different types of lighting conditions, and the front-facing camera, compared to the Pixel at least, especially the portrait mode, which Samsung calls like live effect, it did not cut around my head accurately for the portrait effect, the bokeh, and was just very underwhelming to the output of what the camera took. The rear camera, depending on the situation, what you're going for, it might be perfectly adequate for you. If you're coming from an older Samsung device, if you're coming from another Android device and you're able to get in on this deal from T-Mobile, for example, like trading in S7, getting $500 for it, I think you have just gone a huge upgrade for this with this phone. If you're coming from another flagship device within the past year, say another Samsung device, Pixel in my case, I just don't think the camera has done a good enough value for you to make that jump. If camera is what you're going for, it does offer 4K 60 frames a second video recording, which is great. It does offer Pro mode video and photo mode, so you don't see pro video mode that often in devices. So it was nice to see that. If you're coming from a Pixels don't have great video recording capabilities, but this would do you just fine. Now, because you do have the other lenses, you're going to have a lot wider of array of flexibility on how and what you can shoot photos of. But in my experience using the ultra wide camera, once again, disappointed. I shot a photo of this rock formation along the side of the road. Rocks, there's some water on it with greenery, and everything was very distorted on the outer sides of the image. The road actually looks like it's curved, not flat. It just looks like everything was kind of zooming in and like conforming around this sphere, kind of like a fisheye almost. And it was really weird. I never experienced that in a lot of other devices like OnePlus. They usually have a curvature correction in the ultra wide mode, but nothing like that here. So again, that's just some weird photography stuff going on. Again, I don't know if Samsung is going to put out a fix. No idea. I can't wait on fixes that potentially may or may not occur on a device, and especially trading in a phone, putting money down. I have a certain amount of time to make a decision on what I want to do, and I have decided, spoiler alert, that I'm actually returning the device. In terms of battery life, now we're talking about 5G on this device. We're talking about 120 hertz, 4,500 milliamp hour battery, by the way, inside this. It does support wireless charging, reverse wireless charging, fast charging up to 25 watts through USB-C. So there's a lot going on in here for battery. Now, battery life, I've been pleased. I have had 5G turned on at all times. I am allowing for 120 hertz to work. I also work inside of a building underground where service is not actually the best, and that kills batteries. And Pixel 4, that's not really a great comparison, but has terrible battery life regardless. This, I can get through a day and be perfectly fine. 120 hertz, and it works. I was very surprised. I was expecting for me to get about similar battery life to my Pixel 4 and having to charge during the day, but for this, I'm able to go throughout the day, let's say charge when I get home, and then leave the device unplugged overnight, and go through my day, and then charge a little bit later in the day. I can go easily 14 plus hours. I've gotten consistently over 5 hours of screen on time, several days, 4.5 hours screen on time, and I was at 40% battery life left. And to me, that is fantastic. Again, my use case is going to be different than yours. You might have your screen brightness up differently. I have dark mode enabled all the time. I use nap time app, just like I mentioned. And so all these things go into affecting your battery life. So just keep that in mind. But overall, I think you're going to be pleased with the battery life. I had no issues whatsoever getting through a solid day of battery use, listening to music, watching some videos, social media, texting, things like that. Perfectly fine. Some of you might be interested in haptic feedback. That was something that I was unfortunately disappointed in. Coming from a Pixel, they have one of the best haptic feedback motors for Android devices. I enjoyed the feeling of typing, of just the system vibrations that are involved on Android. And unfortunately, as if you saw my unboxing video, I felt like the vibration wasn't even there. Even unlocking the device, typing, the haptics feel like they're coming from the top part of the phone. They're not very strong. It's a very weak vibration, but yet, even though I have the vibration turned up, typing on it, the system feedback isn't strong, but yet vibrations for notifications are quite strong. I think it's because, one, depending on how you're resting the phone on the surface that you have, is vibrating through the camera and the rest of the body versus when you're holding it, that vibration is not right near where your fingers are. And so I have a feeling that the vibration motor is small and maybe not near towards the bottom where you're actually holding the device. So it takes away from that premium feel. Then again, you are only paying $700, or if you're on the T-Mobile case, got it for free, $200. I don't know. It's just interesting to keep in mind that if you spent that sort of money, $700 on a device, I would expect more in terms of more than just fast performance and a smooth display, great looking display. I would prefer something that's more well-rounded, and one being cameras. Pixel 4a, Pixel 3a, Pixel 4a 5G, all these devices are far cheaper, budget even, and have one of the best cameras on Android for $400 or $350 depending on what type of device you got. I don't know. It's just infuriating that such a great phone on paper doesn't live up to that paper spec. And that's something that a lot of hype, a lot of reviewers are focusing on, that this hype of top-end specs, flagship phone, yes, it's great, this, that, and then immediately forget about it. Don't mention any of the bugs or issues that they come across. Every phone, even from mid-range now, that uses a mid-range chipset is going to have great performance. And so that's just kind of a given almost, unless if you're talking about a sub $300 phone that uses maybe MediaTek chipset or a really cheap budget processor, then that's going to be different. But this, I don't know. Would I recommend it if you did get it for free? Absolutely. If you came from an older device that you traded in, this is going to be a great upgrade for you. If you're coming from another device, like I mentioned, that was a flagship within the past year, I don't think it's going to be worth upgrading to this. The overall package of this device is quite good. Is it $700 good? That I don't know. That's debatable. But I like the design. I don't like the software. Don't really like the cameras. But if you got a great deal on the Samsung Galaxy S20 FE 5G, then be happy with it. Use it. Get used to it. And hopefully Samsung does you right with updates, fixes, optimizations, and software on the cameras. Hopefully they push out the Android 11 beta or the even stable build in a timely manner. Don't take my word for it. Experience it for yourself. Go to a Best Buy, T-Mobile carrier store, use it. If you like it, then you can pick it up. If not, you know to walk away. Don't say I didn't warn you, but just if you guys have questions, comments, concerns, leave them down in the comment section below. I'll do my best to help you out, answer them. Like I said, I'm returning this back to T-Mobile, so I won't have the device. I won't be able to do any sort of update on this phone with software updates or anything like that, which is unfortunate, but it is what it is. You can always pick this up on Amazon. Again, Black Friday might be coming around. You might get this on a deal unlocked completely from Amazon. I'll leave the link down in the description where you can pick this up on Amazon. They have all the colors that you might want, from orange to the white color to this mint to red. You name it, Amazon has it. So yes, you purchasing it from Amazon will help me get a small kickback as well. Thank you again if you watched this to the very end. I appreciate your support and sticking through this whole long video. Until next time, my name is Chris. I'll see you all in the next video. Take care.